Hey, it's Mark Lynn here with your video thought for the day. Well, this is a special Holy Week in Christian calendaring, but this Friday, April 15th, starts the Holy Week of Passover within the Jewish calendar. Pesach is the Jewish celebration, which actually forms the root of a good bit of the Easter story. And so as I talk this week about Jesus, I want to talk about Jesus in terms of his Jewishness and specifically realizing not only Jesus was a Jew, but so were his apostles. And they celebrated and lived Jewish lives at the time. And so I want to talk about that because the Passover is key to understanding some of the significance of Jesus in the life of me as a Christian. So the Passover, refresher lesson here. The Israelites were living under bondage in slavery in Egypt. And Pharaoh, as the overlord, had them as slave labor. And the persecution was great. And they'd been there for centuries. And God called Moses to lead them out unto the opportunity to worship and be with God in this incredible relationship. God was going to take them from bondage, slavery, the horrors associated with that, into a life of a promised land with land that oozes milk and honey. And the redemption that's in God. It wasn't going to be an easy life, but it was going to be a life under the bounty and protection of God, a different life. And that is what's celebrated in Passover. Now, it was during a Passover celebration that Jesus instituted what is commonly called in the church the Eucharist or communion or the Lord's Supper. What happened was Jesus was at a Passover feast with his apostles. And at that feast, at one point, he takes some of the unleavened bread and he breaks it and he shares it with his apostles. But he says that the bread is actually symbolic of his body that would be given for them, the wine symbolic of his blood that would be shed for them, and that this is an understanding that they should keep with them. Now, Jesus then goes and dies, is buried, is resurrected, and comes as the first new man in a sense. And he takes with him those who are his followers, and we have this claim in this new life that Jesus has. It's Paul puts it this way in a letter to the Romans. Now, Paul was trained as a rabbi, actually a Jewish lawyer, but he was trained in the law at the feet of one of the best rabbis of his day. And Paul, trained in the law at the feet of this rabbi, Gamaliel, learned certain things. He certainly knew the Passover well. And Paul echoes that in this letter to the Romans when he says that there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, because the law of the Spirit of life in Christ has set us free from the law of sin and death. Now, don't get lost in those words if you find them confusing. What he's saying is, in essence, that just as in the Passover, God liberated his people from the bondage and slavery to Pharaoh, so in Jesus, the people of God are liberated from the bondage and slavery to sin. Because sin is sticky and it clings to us and it calls us out, and it's almost a vicious cycle. We sin and we feel bad about it, so we just sin some more. And there is in Jesus a release from that, but it's like the release of Pharaoh's people, of the Israelites from Pharaoh. It's not just hey, you're free. It's you're free to serve. You're free to do good things. You are free to live a life of service and devotion to God, which is what we were made to do originally before the fall anyway. So I want you to think about this today, and as a believer, I challenge you to live a life that celebrates the freedom in Jesus by serving and loving and caring for others. We can have the best life if we're living that life for others and not for ourselves, which is what Jesus modeled. Now, more on this tomorrow. I've got an interesting idea for you I'm looking forward to taping, but this is your video thought for today.